Thank you again for coming here. It was an absolute pleasure, Sean.
And I have to warn you, I've got some bad background noise. So,
I don't think it's gonna be a problem because it's
okay,
2025 and we had an AI that can cancel any noises.
nice, good.
How are you doing?
Yeah, fine. It's Friday here, towards the end of March in San Francisco, California, and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful time to be here. It's going to be about, I guess, in Celsius, about 22 degrees today. So that's
Wow.
nice.
You're basically mainly based in San Francisco, as far as I understood that.
Yeah, mainly. Though I spent a lot of time in Tokyo, obviously, and
Yeah,
I spent some time in Europe because my daughter lives in England.
I see. Sean, you had a crazy life.
Well, that's one way to put it.
Yeah, it's a life full of achievements. You were president and the CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment America, chairman of PlayStation Worldwide Studios, strategic advisor in Tencent, then in Streamline Media Group, and now, as far as I understood, you're enjoying your retirement and doing some part-time job as a founding board member of Gripple as a hobby project, as far as I understood.
Yeah, I've got a couple of startups. One's
Nice.
Gripple, which is a social media network for sports fans we're working on, and another group called Tiger AI, which is doing a music integration project between
Wow.
independent music artists, independent game developers, and trying to find a way to make music more accessible that way.
Mhm.
But I spent a lot of my time with my nonprofit called Girls Make Games,
Mhm.
and that is a true passion project for me. Layla Shabir, the woman who started that group, is a force of nature, and we're about 15 years into it now, and we key off boot camps every summer for
Wow.
young women between the ages of 8 and 16 who want to get a leg up into game development. And yeah, we have these 30-day boot camps where they make a team, then they make a game, then they build a demo, and they have to show it off to game professionals. Uh,
It's
I like
mainly it's a
so
mainly US based or it's an
mainly US
international.
based. So we have done a couple of instances in Europe. We've done a couple of instances in Asia. We're just trying to build an infrastructure around supporting that. But my view on it is we talk about the importance of STEM. What is that? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics
Mhm.
in America. We talk about that a lot. And my view is the best, if you allow the metaphor, the best gateway drug into science engineering is video game development. You can talk to young
Oh,
children about, hey, you want to be a computer scientist? And that's abstract. I don't know what to make of that. But if you say, hey, do you want to make a video game? All kids say yes.
true, but it mainly depends about the regions also, I believe. But we'll
Mhm.
go back to that shortly. Um, I remember we started our LinkedIn connection back in 2020 or 2021 when we were trying to invite you to game conference here in CIS Middle East region. And I mentioned there that I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm a huge fan of your work because it's more than 50 years and it's quite impressive journey. And the value that you bring to the industry is truly irreplaceable. I want you to take us back to your early days. Like, what were the key influence or moments from your childhood, maybe, that actually sparked your passion for the gaming and technology?
Well, to be honest, I started with Sony in Japan back in
Yeah,
1987.
seven.
Yeah, well remembered. Um, and that was before Sony had video game ambitions. That's before we had the internet. That's before we had actual, one of the first jobs I had at Sony in Tokyo was introducing them to desktop publishing to get them over the line into that world. But over time, I had different experiences there. And Sony decided in 1994 to get into the video game business. They had designed Actually, Ken Kudragi and his team had designed a an optical media based peripheral for a Nintendo system. Because cartridges have such a small memory footprint. There's only so much you can bake into a cartridge at a time, and the idea was we built a compact disc based peripheral device which would handle all the textures, all the maps, all the streaming, and that would be a great accessory to the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES or Super NES at the time. Um, and at the end of the day, that didn't happen. So Sony were left like at the church, at the altar, and Nintendo didn't show up for the wedding with a compact disc peripheral system, which at the time, the developer of that, Ken Kudragi, said to management at Sony, let me make a game system. We have everything here we need. I just need an OS and content. And that's where I got pulled away from Sony corporate and got invited to join this crazy adventure into video gaming, which I had no idea how it worked back at the time. But as the leader of that team back in the mid '90s said to me at the time was, "Come on, Shawn, join Sony Computer Entertainment. None of us know anything about video games, so we're all going to learn together." And what a great invitation to have, right? The bar set
Right.
appropriately low. You can't mess up because you don't know what the target is yet. We just have to go out there and be something.
Mm.
And that's where it began. And Sony made great decisions at the time. Instead of just creating this as a division of the electronics company, people at Sony had the presence of mind to say, yeah, it's not really electronics, though. It's more entertainment than electronics. So the original Sony Computer Entertainment was created as a joint venture between Sony Electronics and Sony Music Entertainment. So they brought the music guys in, and they were in charge of advertising, marketing, sales, publisher relations, which is an offshoot of A&R, artist and repertoire, how to go out and find the best studios, find the best games, and that whole you could call it the soft skills piece, all
Mhm.
came from Sony Music, which is why the original PlayStation had you know up until then Nintendo and Sega owned the entire category, and they marketed it like games were marketed at the time. Sony came in with its music DNA, and we started marketing games like album releases, new albums from your favorite rock star. And it was weird, it was peculiar, it was sometimes hard to understand, but people thought this is a new thing on gaming, and Sony's very successful with that. We were very successful not only with the generation of the company, but we were the first platform to push optical recordable media as the footprint, i.e., compact disc. And if you're to like flash some ROM on a cartridge for Sega systems or for Nintendo systems, the cost of goods are super high. It was like $8-9, to flash a ROM, as we say. But when we moved to optical media, it's $1 a pop to pump out compact discs. It
Mm.
really changed the entire business model. It changed the entire, what is the minimum requirement to launch a game? If you had ROM cartridges, you had to have a minimum order of more than 100,000 units, or else it didn't make sense to fire up the factory to do the thing.
Yeah.
But with compact disc, we could take an order as small as 10,000 units. So yeah, order 10,000, we'll put in the market, and if it's a runaway hit, you call us on Monday, we'll have X thousand more ready for you by Thursday. We could do that kind of speed of turnaround, which changed the entire business model for gaming.
Wow. But if I'm not mistaken, but at that time you were working closely with Sony's co-founder Akio Morita, right?
That was just before my PlayStation experience. I
Uh-huh.
joined Sony in '87. I worked in the corporate communications department because that, again, is before the internet. So whether it's the New
Yeah.
York Times, whether it's the Times of London, whether it's you know German or Italian media, they
Hmm.
had bureaus in Tokyo. They had reporters embedded in Japan that
Wow.
needed to be dealt with. So that's my job. And then a few years into that, around 1990, the founder and at the time chairman and CEO of Sony, a gentleman named Akio Morita, he saw me doing my job, or I was in an interview with him, or we did a 60 minutes interview with him, and he asked me would I come and join his team as his speechwriter.
Mm.
And I was what? I was like 29 years old at the time. And, it sounded like a hell of a job, but it's the kind of job you can't say no to. Right? When the founder of the company comes and says, "Hey, I want you to be my secretary and be my ghostwriter, my speechwriter, and take care of all my international contacts," you just say yes, right? Okay, yes, sir. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'll figure it out. So I spent 5 years with him, which is essentially my MBA because I never got a business degree. But 5 years, almost 7 days a week, staying with the chairman of Sony, taught me a lot about business.
How exactly working with Akio shaped, maybe in some sort of way, your perspective on leadership, innovation, and business?
I think the biggest change or the biggest influence it had on me is that Morton was the kind of guy. Now, understand, Japanese national, grew up in Japan. Obviously, he was in the Japanese Navy during the Second World War. So English was not his first language; it was his second language. But he embraced it with gusto. Um, and watching him, the way he spoke to the team, I could see him in a board meeting with all the other, board members and senior leadership at Sony, and I could see him going to the cafeteria for lunch.
Mm.
And we all go down the line, we get food put on our tray, we take it to our table. Morrison was the same with everybody. I've seen him in a room with British royalty or with Dr. Henry Kissinger, who I had to go to the airport and pick up, and that's a whole different story. But he was the same with those people as he was with the receptionists in the Sony building, or we go visit factories, and he talked to all the factory line people the same sort of way. He had an amazing connection with people. He knew the importance of listening, knew the importance of. One time he told me, "Shawn, if you're talking to a group and they're not understanding what you're saying, it's not their fault. It's your fault. You
Mm.
need to speak in a way that people can understand you. You can't expect them to change the way they listen. You have to change the way you speak." And those are very important lessons I learned with him. And the other thing I learned with him is have a good time. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, you're definitely in the wrong job.
Yeah, true. You moved to Sony Computer Entertainment. You managed the international software development teams, right?
Yep.
What were some key projects, especially in the beginning when you just started this hype train journey that ex like challenges you, and how did they shape your understanding of gaming industry?
Well, the one thing I learned early on, because I got the job with Sony Entertainment in Tokyo, excuse me, back in '96, was know your customer, know who your fan base is. Um, and over years, I learned that in the game development businesses, don't make games for yourself. I mean, you have to believe in it, you have to love it, you have to want to do it, but ground your own desires and expectations against what do you think the world at large wants to see. So my first job at Sony back in 1996 was to bring Western games, which means European and American games, bring them to Japan, localize them into Japanese, sell them to the Japanese market. And on PlayStation 1, that was incredibly hard because all the best games are coming out of Japan, whether it's Final Fantasy or Gran Turismo or Resident Evil, all the great games, Metal Gear Solid, were all coming out of Japan. And I was trying to bring the Western catalog to the Japanese market with games like Jet Moto and Twisted Metal and Destruction Derby, which were all successful in their home markets, but it just wasn't a genre that the Japanese consumer cared about. So most of my games I brought over to Japan were not successful. But the one game, my most successful game I brought to Japan, and it makes sense, know your customer, I brought Formula One to the Japanese market, and that was a hit. And I'm an American, so I didn't even understand Formula One, but I understood, you know, the country had a deep love of the late driver, Ayrton Senna.
Yeah.
Um, there were two drivers of Japanese citizenship or extraction who were in the Formula One at the time, and that was something, Formula One's a great unifier. You don't need to know a language, you don't need to know a custom. It's
Mhm.
just fastest car wins. And you have the tracks and you have people experience that. And we had the game was being made for us by a company called Bizarre Creations in Liverpool. So it was a truly international product. We had success in Japan. And then about 3 years later, I moved to England because we bought the studio that was making Formula One. Was called Signosis in Liverpool. We bought their whole European and worldwide production footprint, and I moved to England to try to, as you say, integrate the asset.
You've been working in in Japan, and the Japanese culture is quite different from Western culture, especially when it comes to working times. Like they're working from 8 a.m. till midnight.
Right.
How did you tackle this new cultural difference?
Well, I went to Japan to join Sony in 87. So it was pretty much right out of school. I had a couple of small jobs before that, but right out of school. So that's the culture I was raised in. We just knew at the time, particularly, reading up on the situation of business in Japan, is that you come in early and you stay late. That's the bottom line. So when I encountered that, I wasn't surprised by it. I had expected it. But you're right, it was extreme though. I mean, we would get there at 8:15 in the morning and we wouldn't get home until past midnight. There's a big drinking culture in Japan where you finish your job at 8 p.m. and your boss says, let's go for a drink, and you don't get home till midnight. Um, but I guess as a 20 something at the time, you just suck it up and you do it because you feel this is the way it's done. Okay, you know, we've got to be there. You can't leave your office before the boss leaves. If the boss stays till 10 p.m., you're there till 10 p.m. because he or she may need something. So you
Hmm.
stick around. But, let's be honest, even though there'd be 12 or 14-hour working days, they weren't 12 or 14 hours back to back work.
Hmm.
Sometimes you're there because the boss is still there. And so you're reading newspaper clippings to, you know, make yourself feel useful in the moment. But um, there was a large commitment of time, certainly working in Japan back in the day.
I remember one of your previous podcasts, you've mentioned that working in Japan is not the only toughest period. There was another one where you were working 18 hours a day. In your experience, what are the most common misconceptions about productivity and how we can maybe reframe our approach to be more effective?
I think, well, if you talk about misconception of productivity, hours alone do not equate to high productivity or high efficiency. Um, yeah, there was one stretch where we were working 18 hours a day, but that was the time you're probably referencing is when we had the PlayStation Network
Yes.
attack, and we had outside infiltrators who brought down the network, and we had to shut it down. Then we had to find a way to bring it up safely. That took America came up reasonably quickly after that Europe, but Japan and Asia took a lot longer to get up online, and so that was the worst summer of my life in 2011. Getting it done,
Oh.
but you do that because you have to. I mean, at least the one thing I'll say about the time when the PlayStation Network went down, I didn't wake up in the morning wondering what I was going to do today. You had one job. One job is to get the network back up. So there was a certain clarity of purpose, though it took a lot of time a lot of hours every day. Um, Productivity to me, though, is best is best seen in light of the simple question: what problem are you trying to solve? What outcome are you chasing? What entertainment do you want to put in front of people? Keep your mind around the core principles and don't be flitting off into corners, which may not be pursuing your goal. Always remind yourself every morning, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? I mean, it sounds simple, it sounds obvious, but anyone who's worked in a company knows those feelings when you sometimes go to the office and you don't know, I'm sorry, what am I supposed to do today? What's the expected outcome of my effort for the day? Um, And in game development, it's just you got to keep on message, you got to keep on purpose. You've got to keep pushing it because, it's easy to get distracted in game development. There's a lot of rabbit holes you can run down to try to do a thing. Um,
Such as,
it's like such as, hey, what if we change the entire, um, instead of using sticks and buttons, what if you use the
yeah.
motion controller inside the controller to make the character go around the world? That's an interesting experiment, and sometimes it works, most times it doesn't. Um, and a good producer allows his team a little leeway to explore in these different areas, but a really good producer allows the team to do that and then sets, you know, okay, if we can prove this works here and prove that works there, we go forward. But if you can't prove either of those things, get off it and move on. Keep
Mhm.
them on message, keep them on purpose. Um, Game producer is one of the hardest jobs in the world.
Oh, coming back to the point of asking yourself every morning, what is your mission here? Like
Hmm.
there was this saying that they made some sort of TikTok reel or something where the guy is saying that he stopped liking his jobs, but he's still going there because it pays well, and he started to hate himself more and more and more and more. I think like I'm not sure about the gaming industry, but I
Hmm.
guess people like this are everywhere, and it's some sort of a trap by itself also, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot more people in game development today um, than in the past. Um, I don't know if the amount of talent in the game development world has increased at all, but certainly the humans have. Um, Again, like I said earlier, the job of the game producer is so vital, so important to keep a team on message, keep a team on purpose, and also as a producer to understand, am I moving the ball forward at the right speed, at the right trajectory?
Hmm.
It's a super hard job. It's half business, but it's largely human relations. At Sony, we never talked about product management. We never talked about program management, project management, whatever. Um, Looking at our studios and how we work with them, the term we used was artist management because we're managing artists. We're not managing widget machines. They're just trying to kick out a product. It's an artist. They're a group of artists. It's more like managing a rock band than it is managing a software development team.
You were a key figure. Like you were always a key figure when it comes to, especially to E3 conferences. Like I remember how everyone was like gathering around in this part of the world to watch your next announcement or next game. Can you share a memorable moment from those events and highlight your team's role when it comes to making them successful?
So I was only on the E3 stage, what, 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 5 times, 5 years. And my first couple of years, I felt very lost. I was wearing a suit and tie. It seemed like a weird place for me to be because I came from game development. We don't stand in
Yep.
front of things, we stand behind things.
Yep.
But that was a job. We came and did it. But I think by 2016, um, I finally figured out how this game rolls. 2016 was the year we had the big God of War reveal at E3 in Los Angeles.
Yep.
And to be able to walk out on a stage and have an 87-piece orchestra, in front of me with Bear McCreary, one of the greatest soundtrack writers of all time, conduct the orchestra. That's when I knew, okay, we've come to a different place. And I felt more comfortable because I just want to tell the story about how these great artists come together and develop these visions. And that was a great show. We started off with God of War for the secret reveal. Corey Barlog's sitting up there on the balcony, actually playing the game in real time. Um, Yeah, I think Corey was the only person who sweat more than me that day. He was he was up there making the thing happen. Kratos appears. Boy, I'm hungry. He comes out. The crowd goes wild. And then later on that same show, I was able to reveal Crash Bandicoot coming back um, to PlayStation, and we had that reveal. And we had Kojima walk down this like Michael Jackson staircase of light to say, "I'm back." and the crowd went wild. No, 2016 was probably the best E3 that I was associated with, and arguably one of the best E3s that Sony had done. We had God of War, Crash, Kojima, and everything else wrapped in the same ribbon. Um, in an auditorium where we had an 87-piece orchestra, and the vocalist, we flew in from Iceland that morning, and she flew back to Reykjavik that night. But she was the woman who did the vocals on God of War, so we had to have her in the room to make it happen.
Your role as a CEO, like as far as I understood, it spans a lot. Like you've touched the marketing department, you touched in game producing department, sort of. You always everywhere all at once. Like, is that why you get the fixer nickname?
Which nickname was that?
Fixer.
Oh, the
Yeah.
Fixer. Uh, I guess. I mean, I worked for Sony for 32 years.
Yes.
And in 30 years, I probably had like 14 or 15 jobs. And some in Japan, some in Europe, some in America. Um, I look back at my career and realize the only job I ever applied for was the first job back in 1987. And every job I had subsequent to that was based on people coming up to me, tapping me on the shoulder and saying, either we have a broken thing over here, can you fix it? Or we're getting a whole new business in a new place we don't know anything about. Do you want to try to be part of that? Um, and so I guess my reputation in the company over time or at the beginning or whatever was give Layden a broken thing and he'll can probably fix it. Or give him a puzzle to solve. I love solving puzzles. I guess that's probably my uh, the takeaway from this conversation is what does Shawn like to do? I just like to solve puzzles.
Well, as you mentioned, like you've been with Sony for like 32 years. And what emotions or reflections did you experience during your transition to closing that chapter and moving on?
I think I left Sony at the end of 2019 because we'd achieved a lot. We just spent the last, when I left, we'd spent 2 years shipping games like Last of Us 2, God of War, Horizon, Spider-Man, uh, Concrete Genie, Ghost of Tsushima. We'd done some great work and launched a bunch of great games. And we were just getting to start the ramp up for PlayStation 5. Um, in my career at Sony, I've had the privilege of launching probably 6 platforms, including the home console, VR, portable, all of that. And to launch a new platform is a particular song and dance. What games can you have on day and date, and how do you make a bullet hit a bullet, which is hardware launch, software launch coming together. It's important. It's exhausting, and I felt I'd done it enough. There was nothing new I was going to bring to that activity, and strictly speaking, let younger people deal with this problem. And so I left at 19. Um, and the idea was maybe I'd get another job somewhere. I'm still in my 50s. But then COVID hit and shut the world down for a year. And in that time, I realized I spent 32 years like in the Sony factory, in the Sony machine. Actually, what I wanted to do was not to align myself with one company again, but go out in the world and eat at a huge buffet of different types of food and see what's interesting. So that's what I've been doing since then. I continue to do it now. And I guess to your question, the biggest transition was, can I go from this monolithic culture into a completely unbound culture? And it was scary, it was frightening. I was not sure I could do it. But yeah, we seem to be okay.
No, you're doing great, I guess.
But
Uh,
I tell this story a lot of times to people. What was that like? And being the chairman of Worldwide Studios after being the CEO of SC America and being the CEO of SC Japan, it's like driving your car through the safari park, like the Lion Country Safari or something, and there's this big lion who sits up on the top of the hill and is looking down on all the cars driving through. You go, oh, wow, that's a big lion. He runs this whole place. He's like king of beasts, which is all true. But after after you guys leave the park, and 4 in the afternoon, this pickup truck pulls by and throws this dead antelope in the road, and the big lion comes off the hill, eats the antelope, and goes back on the top of the hill and sits there looking very imposing. So my fear was that I've been eating the dead antelope in the road for 30 years. Let's just throw it out there. When I leave Sony, can I go out in the world and can I kill what I need to eat?
Hmm.
Can I kill the antelope now? And that's a real concern. That's a real worry. But after 5 years of it, I've figured out how to do it myself. I can kill the antelope.
Right. But there are some rumors also there. By the way, if you said that we don't need to talk about it, we'll just cut this part.
It's all right.
There was some sort of rumors published by Kotaku also that,
Well, then,
um,
then it must be true.
well, there are some rumors that you left PlayStation also because of this new microservice strategy that is
Oh,
coming up. Is that true?
well, you know,
Because you're an evangelist of like the whole single player narrative.
yep.
When during your reign, what we saw mainly is the single player games. More, we had a chance to associate ourselves with the gaming industry, and you're maybe one of the key figures that helps in industry itself to get acknowledged as another way of the culture, maybe. Because before that, at least, like if we're talking about gaming, I mean, in Armenia or in CIS regions in Russia, it's still the case. Like when you're talking about the gaming industry, first thing is you want to get on your face is like, okay, you're gonna be a dumb. Gaming is evil. So because of these games, because of the single player narratives, the storytelling, as you said, like art management, gathering artists
Yep.
together, like the narrative has shifted.
Yep.
And now we're seeing that microservices and other more monetization
Mm-hmm.
oriented stuff is coming up. And then Kotaku's article, and you left.
Uh, I'll be honest. That was part of my reasoning. Not only did I not want to like do the heavy lifting left of the platform, but I could see the company. Um, we had new management here in PlayStation. We had new management at Sony Corp, and there was a huge drive towards games as a service, live service gaming, the whole idea about recurring revenue, about monetization across time. And while they're all important things, and there's some games that have done it very, very well, I knew that's not the kind of game I make. And and I was very clear with management at the time that if you want to do that sort of thing, maybe I'm not the best person to lead that initiative because, for better or for worse, I go all in on things like Ghost of Tsushima. I go all in on Spider-Man and God of War and Last of Us and Uncharted, Horizon. These are the games I grew up on. These are the games I grew up building. And these are the games that I understand what the game is. I understand who the customers are. And in this whole world of can you be Fortnite? Can you be GTA Online? Can you be Apex Legends? Can you be Valorant? The list goes on. Um, that was a different world of gaming, and I'll be the first one to say I don't I don't grok it as well as other people do. So I felt my time was maybe coming to an end. The kind of games I make maybe weren't the future. But in the 5 years since I left, we've seen the actual fact on the ground. Um, Live service gaming is hard. It's often you bump into it accidentally. I mean, I love GTA. I love GTA Online, but I know, I'm pretty sure that when Rockstar made GTA 5, they weren't thinking about this huge online component. It just kind of came about over time as an obvious opportunity, and they leaned into it really hard, and that was great. And Fortnite, I mean, I remember when Fortnite was a $60 game, which wasn't very successful. And as Epic looked to turn it down, they kind of found this whole Fortnite situation. They kind of pulled the Battle Royale piece out, threw that into the marketplace as a free to play, and that's what most people think is Fortnite now. It's hard to plan for success in that arena, but you have to be super opportunistic, be able to move super fast to make a thing happen. And I don't think those are skills I possessed or my studios at the time possessed, and arguably Sony's still having trouble making that work for them.
Unfortunately, not only them, but like the whole gaming industry is struggling right now. Well, mainly.
Exactly. You know, live service gaming, games as a service, these sorts of games. You know, it's kind of a new revolution, and a bunch of money's been made around it. And I think we're only now beginning to understand what the consumer dynamic is with regards to these kind of games, these forever games, these 24/7, always on kind of games. One of the parameters around there that I think the industry is just starting to understand or feel right now is that there's a very small number of games in that genre that can be successful at the same time. If you try to bring a new, this is just like Apex, or this is just like Overwatch. We're going to put that in the
Mhm.
marketplace and suck up that opportunity. Just being good enough is not enough
Mhm.
because you're not asking people to just try my game, see how it works. You're asking people to switch from one lifestyle pattern they have created for themselves. They go home and every night at 7 o'clock they get on Fortnite because all their friends are on there, and it's less game playing than it is just kind of hanging out. And so to get people to change that behavior into a new, games as a service world, maybe it's a similar looter shooter dynamic, but they're different characters, different people. You don't have to switch one person to get there. You've got to get that one person to bring their whole network family with them. And the whole family saying, dude, let's just stay on Overwatch. It's so much cooler here. Let's stay on Fortnite. It's so much cooler here. People won't move. You don't play in those games to experience the game per se. There's no story. There's no character development. There's no ultimate outcome. It's it's a calisthenic. It's a recreation. It's a place you go to hang out and do a thing. So to get people from switching from their own preferred world to come over to your new game service world, just the game being good enough is not enough. You've got to convince them they need to change their lifestyle to come over and spend the rest of their life inside your game. It's a different dynamic entirely, and I'll be honest, it's not one I understand very well. I just know that to play in that space, you've got to have a huge understanding of it, and I'm the single player narrative guy.
Could the triumph of Chinese Black Myth Wukong game as a showcase of Chinese culture and technology be
Mhm.
seen as a significant challenge to Western dominance in gaming industry?
Oh,
What do you think?
I don't see it as a challenge. I think we've just opened up another market where we're getting deeper into the playing field. Now, is it going to take some money away from Western games, whatever that means? Yes, probably, but who cares? It's a world of games. Now we're getting people to look into the Chinese gaming culture, which, up until now has been kind of hard to penetrate, whether it's a localization problem or whether it's just a game style problem. But the people behind Black Myth Wukong, we're constantly trying to, bridge that divide, and they did a spectacular job. And they did it for like rumored just $50 million, which would be an incredible development cost price point when you see so many AAA games now spiraling into the 200, $300 million
Yeah.
development budgets. So much in the same way, I look at Black Myth Wukong the way in film, I look at a movie like Godzilla Minus One, which is the best Godzilla movie ever made. It's probably one of the best movies about post-war Japan ever made. And Yamazaki-san, who is the director and also the VFX director, found a way to, by using tight shots, doing night shots, doing stuff on the water, they could make a spectacular movie as that was for $15 million. In Hollywood, you can't do a trailer for less than $10 million,
Mhm.
but they did an entire movie for 15.
Yeah,
Um,
10 million is the minimum budget for like behind the scene
yeah,
thing.
yeah, exactly. So I love that whether it's the Godzilla team out of Japan or it's a Black Myth Wukong team out of China, shaking up the entertainment industry and saying, we don't have to live in the $300 million to make content space. Because when you get to that space, and I was at a conference last week or last month, and they asked me, "So, Shawn, what's one of your what's the achievement you're going to be known for?" And I said, "The achievement I'll probably be remembered for is I drove the price of triple A gaming to the $250 million range." And too many people followed, and that was probably not a great thing. But the games were amazing, and we had to do them. Um, but I'll be the first to admit you don't need to spend $200 million to make a great game, and the things we're just talking about show that to be true. And if we claw back some of the expense in creating games, I think we'll get more games out there, which, in my definition, that's demonstrably a good outcome for the gaming market.
Can we say that leaving PlayStation, or is there any other like toughest challenge or toughest leadership decisions that you made during your PlayStation period?
Obviously, the most difficult decision any executive makes in any situation is letting people go. Um, Thankfully, I didn't have to do that very often, but there were, at least, you know, more than three, less than five, probably moments in my career where I had to look at the structure, look at the games we made. Some of them weren't successful, and try to make a hard decision. Do we continue to finance certain teams, or do we let them go and do something else with somebody else? Um, those are super hard decisions because you can't let a team go because you gave them a chance and they failed. You got to give teams multiple chances. This is entertainment. What sounded like a good idea 2 years ago, when it got to market 4 years later, it may have just missed its moment. It's not that the game was bad or the team was bad. Circumstances conspired just to make you land your game at the wrong time for the market. So taking those things into consideration, you give people another chance at doing it, or two more chances at doing it. But there does come a time when you have to look at teams or markets where we've just been pouring money into this thing for 5 years and we're not getting any traction at all. is there is there a reason to continue to go forward or not? So the hardest decision I've ever made was to let teams go. And
How do you identify like the truly talented individuals or teams?
well, of course, the ultimate measure is success. So if they make games that everyone wants to
Yeah.
buy and play, you stop worrying about that. Um, but every time you take a team aside and you have to have that hard talk with them, you have to ask yourself, as leadership, you have to ask yourself as management, were we giving the right direction? Did we identify the opportunity for them? Did we help them achieve that in time?
Mhm.
When you have to let a team go, and it's a terrible thing to do, every leader should, I believe, spend some time looking into yourself and asking yourself the question, could I have helped them be more successful? Or where did I fail in helping them be more successful? We brought them in, either we hired them or we purchased their studio. Um, and it's not like buying a goose that lays golden eggs. You've got to help them get there. And if you brought them in and they didn't perform to the expectation, it's not entirely just their fault. You didn't set the expectation properly and you didn't ensure the outcome. So I think leadership needs to take a shot on the chin every time they let a team go.
I see. If you could go back in time
Oh,
and
I'd be much younger. That'd be great.
besides that one, is there any particular thing that you would change during your tenure as PlayStation CEO?
Oh Christ! Every day in every way. Something
You'll
needs to
change
be.
everything.
If I had to do it over again, oh God, yes. I've learned from my big catalog of failure, how not to make the same mistake twice. So everything would change. But that's not the point of your question. Your question is would I have looked at things differently than look at them now? I think I think the biggest thing, this is this is probably not the answer you're looking for. The biggest thing I would have done is listen less to the publishing arm of the company. Even though I ran the publishing arm for in Japan and America for 10 years. Um, I try to listen a lot to the creative spirit, to the teams, what they're building, and how they're trying to get it done and what game they want to do. And I try to make sure that my feedback was really about if that's what you want to do, I think these are ways you need to like frame it or produce it or deliver it. But I think maybe if I go back on now, I was highly influenced by market research and, you know, here the people ask the question, are you data driven? And reflexively we go, oh yeah, of course you are. If I were to go back now, I would say to people, are you data driven? I would look at them and go, hell no, I'm not. Data is a tool, but it doesn't drive me.
Hmm.
Data is something I look at to like reconfirm what I thought was going to happen or challenge my preconceptions. But I won't let data drive me to decisions because data comes from the past. It comes from an event which has occurred already. People bought that thing then. They played that thing over there over that period of time. It's good to know about, but don't let data drive you. Data will drive you into a ditch in the road. Data will drive you to a world where everyone tried to make a live service game in 2023 and 90% of people died. So that's the one thing I would go back in time and go, that whole data driven thing, just stop thinking about
Hmm. Now you mentioned your catalog of failures.
it. Soon to be available in a good bookstore near you. So please buy that.
Yeah.
Sean's Catalog of
Okay.
Failures.
I'll definitely do that. Can you give me some of like examples of failures that actually drastically change your view uh, on a certain things or your view of executing the company, even on your in a personal level?
Right. Okay. Well, that would be a much longer podcast, Armin, than we have time for today. Uh, but to would be game developers or studio management leaders out there in the world who are listening to this, it's an old story, but it's still true today. Um, when I say it, you're going to say, oh, of course, Sean, we all know that. Yeah, but you don't. It sounds pedantic, but it's totally true. When you're doing a deal with a person and you're getting a contract done, don't start doing any work until the contract is signed. Don't put any energy into a thing until you have a signed agreement of who's going to pay what for what and when is that thing supposed to be delivered and how is it supposed to be determined. I've seen over my career, sadly, several projects which have been keyed off and moved forward just based on energy and enthusiasm. Hey, I love that idea. Oh, we can do that. Oh, do my thing. Oh, that'd be great. Let's all come together. Yay. And at some point, to see it blow up because, well, we didn't agree to those terms, or I'm sorry, you were using that character. I didn't sign a license for that. Um, a contract is a pain in the ass, but what a contract is, it's a explication, an outline of each side's expectations of an outcome. I expect to give you this. I expect you to deliver that. Well, I expect to deliver this because you're going to give me that, and all laid out. So to any aspiring studio, have enthusiasm, have engagement, be encouraged by what you're hearing in your conversations with a publishing partner or a distribution partner or whatever other platform. But get that shit in writing before you do any work at all. Um, again, it sounds simple, axiomatic, sounds common sensey, but people fail on that one more often than you think.
Will this be the same? Will you give the same advice to youngsters on their 20s who just starting their career in the game development?
Absolutely, get a good lawyer because because look, when you think about it, you're making a game, even if it's like indie game or a double A game, it's still in the millions of dollars we're talking about to get
Yeah.
this thing off. I mean, you can make Balatro for $500,000, whatever, but The fact that that is such an anomaly in the system proves that this is not a model anybody else can follow.
Hmm.
Typically, you're going to have a game idea. It's going to take millions of dollars to get this thing up and running. So, in your own life, if you're going to spend $2 million to buy a house, you want to see that deed. You want to know what you're buying. You want to have, an
Yeah.
explication of your land starts here and your land ends here, and this house is this tall and it will stand up. And you do due diligence. You're buying a car. You want to find out, did it never get hit before? How many miles are on it? And you take it for a test drive. Why would you start a gaming project with just a handshake? Don't. I know it sounds unsexy, but yeah, if you're a young developer in your 20s, you have a great idea, you have a great team, pull together, find yourself a great lawyer.
One more question.
Mhm.
Like three of them, probably. I'm trying to compress my questionnaire in on my brain as much as possible to not take too much of your time. I want to hear your opinion about this new hype train about Middle East, especially with Saudi Arabia and UAE, that they're like investing huge amount of money and trying to bring all the gaming companies to their region to like completely relocate all the stuff to their region and to make like the cyber sport and gaming industry grow bigger and bigger there.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of money coming out of the Middle East right now, whether it's from Saudi or whether it's from Qatar or other, the Emirates. I think are getting in there
Mhm.
too. I look at it the same way that I saw maybe 6, 7 years ago when all of a sudden Google was interested and Netflix were interested and Amazon were interested. I tell this story a lot to people that everything was great in gaming and we were able to do our thing and build our games and we had, red versus blue versus green, all these
Yeah.
consoles fighting together. But it was kind of a thing that happened over there and only those of us in this circle understood it. When the gaming industry, in some article, whether it's the Wall Street Journal or Forbes, said video gaming is a $200 billion industry, almost at the time of concomitant with that announcement, um, you had all the big players, all the barbarians came to the gate. They were Google, they were Amazon, they were Apple, they were Netflix, Nvidia, coming up saying, "Hey, that's a big industry. Why don't you kids move aside and let the big boys come in and control it? And we're going to have Stadia, which is going to be a completely, subscription based streaming service. And Amazon is going to make amazing games, and Netflix is going to have a game service, and Apple had arcade and all that. And in time, across that spectrum, all those companies failed because making games is not simply if I have enough money and I have enough tech, I can make a game. You can't do that. 20 years ago, we saw every studio in Hollywood have an interactive division. MGM Interactive, Fox Interactive, Universal Interactive. And their idea was if we have IP, why don't we just make games? How hard could it be? And every studio found out exactly how hard it is. And they all got out of it. Now you're seeing Stadia close. Netflix is sizing down. Amazon is still in it, but not with quite the um, investment as before. And they've all seen that coming here is very hard. So to answer your question, yeah, a lot of Middle East money. They want to be, life after oil, right? What
Mhm.
else can we do here? And they're going to put a little cash in it. I see a lot of that investment going into esports, which is something I'm not very close to,
Yeah.
single player narrative guy. And so maybe that works over there. I'm not quite sure. But they'll put a lot of money in it. They have a lot of investments in it. Um, I hope what they do is they invest that money in traditional gaming teams and listen to them and understand how we think this is the way that game gets to market. But if they want to come in with money and a strategy or money and demands that get this thing done in this time frame to this audience, I don't think they'll be successful. I think they'll end up like Google and Amazon. They'll have spent a lot of money and not quite understood what they're trying to do, and the outcome won't be great. But I invite them to come in. I mean, that's great. This industry needs more capital all the time, um, but I don't know what their strategy is
Mhm.
and how they're going to get there. Um, but I'm far from intimidated or worried about it. I think it's great. It's just more people around the world recognizing that this is one of the futures of the planet is in interactive entertainment.
John, I have one more, like, a bit personal question, maybe.
Okay.
Success most of the time comes with a lot of sacrifices, especially if we are talking about like the big ones. What's something you feel you had to give up, whether time, relationships, or personal dream, to reach where you are now, and how you trying to reconcile it now?
Probably the biggest sacrifice I made, and it's true for I'm sure a lot of people in the industry or in all industry, particularly in gaming, where you're trying to build something new. Oh, it's not new, Sean. Nintendo and Sega had it before. Yes, but we tried to get in there and disrupt that table and to come with a completely new vision. And arguably, PlayStation had been successful because it's now the biggest gaming platform in the world and has been for 10 years. You don't get there by working part time. You don't get there by working 40 hours a week. You get there by, working 7 days a week, at least 10 hours a day. And personally, I probably missed a lot. I missed too many sporting events and concerts where my kids were playing that I should have been there to see it. And that's the thing I'll regret for the rest of my life. I missed too much of my kids growing up to try to make this industry great. And if I had it all do over again, to your earlier question, um, I would have reversed that.
This is one of the biggest lessons of yours.
Yeah, yeah. Don't miss out on your family and your kids while you're trying to build something amazing. Choose a lane. Be the entrepreneur or be the good dad. It's hard to be both.
Well, I'm still on an entrepreneur path. I don't have kids.
There you go. You're doing it right. You're doing it right.
I'm I'm thinking about building it first, then like building the family, so I won't have to sacrifice it.
That's the right idea.
Yeah. But you've mentored, did you mentor other people, like leaders throughout your career?
I grew up at a time where we didn't even use the word mentor. Um, you didn't have people who were called your mentor. You didn't like go
Mhm.
to a service and like rent a mentor on subscription or whatever. Um, but we grew up at a time where it's just who's doing it right? Who can I learn from? Who can I follow? What lessons can I take from all these different leaders in my life? Which is why now, even though 5 years since I left Sony, um, anyone from my Sony past who I've been with, worked with, or had known, um, they can call me at any time. I'll always jump on a Zoom call or get a phone call and try to help people with whatever's bothering them in the moment. Um, One of the things about being as old as I am and have done as many things as I've done, uh, there are two things I have that a person in their 30s or 40s can't have. They can't know as many people as I do, and they can't have made as many mistakes as I have. And these are two things that in my golden years, people find value in. You know, we'll talk to Sean because he knows everybody, and we'll talk to Sean because he's had countless near-death experiences, but hasn't died yet. So let's ask him how we do these things without dying.
Still sometimes struggling with imposter syndrome, right?
Oh, obviously, of course, I'll have that for the rest of my life. Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is what keeps it real. You don't believe your own bullshit, and you keep interrogating with yourself. Do I know what I'm talking about? Am I saying the right thing? Am I actually helping a person, or am I just bloviating in the wind? No, I think imposter syndrome is healthy.
Yeah, I agree with that more than anything else. From one imposter to another.
There
I
you
mean,
go. Fake it till you make it. Exactly.
yeah, yeah, true. Like my journey is not that long still as yours. Like I'm still 28.
Oh,
Uh,
dude, you gotta. My kids are older than you, so.
yeah, I spent like last 10 years into engineering, learning all
Uh-huh.
the engineering technologies, software mainly to like keep it as the main source of income for me because I love it also. So I've
Hmm.
tried to enter to the gaming industry world, but in this part of the world there is zero education about it. Like at that time there was the
Yeah.
information wasn't that available here. So I was like, okay, I can't go and learn Unreal Engine and Unity and do crazy stuff like that. So maybe I'll go to software engineering, learn some stuff, and
Hmm.
do a bit similar at least, so I can keep the that personal touch with everything. And at the same time, I was trying to like make gaming industry more popular here.
Hmm.
I failed and I learned a lot of lessons about it. But that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask you based on your experience. Like, if you had to
Hmm.
raise a video gaming awareness, like in a way that you did, in a country where it's culturally stigmatized, what would be your go-to marketing strategies to change the perceptions?
So you're in Armenia, right?
Yes.
What do children do? How do they play? What does play mean to a 12-year-old?
Now everyone is playing like mobile games since one
Okay.
year. Uh, I mean, as soon as they got birth, they had the tablets with them, so they're playing some
Okay.
puzzle games. Before, when I was a kid, like we don't have any type of computers, like we had
Uh-huh.
Sega and stuff. Still hard to access of them.
Uh-huh.
And not everyone has it. But even if they had, there was not a gaming problem, but it was a culture problem where your
Uh-huh.
parents were like, okay, if you're playing more than 30 minutes, you're gonna be a dumb and you will not achieve anything in your life. And we don't gonna raise a loser, so turn it off.
Well, I guess the rest of the world has started to see that differently, and maybe Armenia is a few years behind.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was talking to parents because I would go to events, and I was on the board of the Entertainment Software Association. Some, you know, video game violence. What does that mean? And how are you destroying your kid? And I would just answer to parents. They said, "Well, Sean, what do you do with your kids? Do you limit their game time?" I said, "I don't. I mean, it's hard if you're, work for PlayStation to tell your kids not to play games. But the positive thing I will tell parents about the gaming culture or the gaming experience is you can have your kids that will sit back on the sofa and watch cartoons for 7 hours or whatever it is, and they're just like absorbing the cartoons or TV shows or what have you. But when they're playing games, they're not leaning back and they're leaning forward, and they have their
Mhm.
controller. And what is gaming? Gaming is problem solving. Gaming is looking at patterns, recognizing patterns, divining a solution to get to the next level, to get to the next place. So it's problem solving. You get killed in the game, you get up and do it again. It's persistence. It's like, I get knocked down, but I get up again. And gaming gives you that. So it gives you problem solving, gives you persistence. It gives you an attach to all your other gaming friends. You have this thing to do, thing to talk about, this thing that is meaningful to all of you. Um, and then you can learn things. You can play Assassin's Creed, and all of a sudden you have a working understanding of what the Roman Empire was like. You can play Gran Turismo, and you start to understand. Wow, that's weird. So downforce means the car doesn't flip out in the corner, and horsepower is this. In my generation, I learned most of my elementary science from reading Superman comic books.
Wow.
You learn about gravity, you learn about distance between planets, you learn all this kind of stuff.
I
So
learned English.
there you go. But your point is, you learn, and I want people to understand that gaming is learning. Gaming is, they think, oh, video games just spaced out doing something. You can't be spaced out doing a video game. You got to be
Yeah.
engaged. You got to be there, or else your character is just going to fall into that pit and die. So gaming is more engaging than watching movies, watching TV shows, or listening to music. The only thing that's as engaging as gaming is probably reading.
Mhm.
So I put gaming on the same level as reading as far as the impact on children, and more parents need to understand that.
So your go-to strategy will be to concentrate more attention to parents, try to educate parents first rather than pushing the
Well,
gaming itself.
the parents have the money.
Yeah.
So you got to get them to buy you the game. But they're the ones that need the education. Children don't. Children are naturally curious. They're naturally
Yeah.
experimental. They want to do the new thing, not the old thing. That's just being a kid.
Hmm.
Um, and, society now, parents are the gatekeeper. They've always have been. And they need to get their head across the line saying, well, I guess rather than watching 7 hours of cartoons on a Saturday, having my kid in a game solving puzzles, solving problems, learning what linear equations look like, and this bridge doesn't work because that piece isn't there, and I've got to have this thing going. It's interactive entertainment. It's called that for a reason. You have to participate in it. Where other forms of entertainment, you just passively submit yourself to it.
Right. What is the biggest lesson from leading PlayStation that you believe any industry can learn from?
Well, the biggest lesson I learned from Sony, I learned this from Akio Morita. There was a time in about 1990, the early 1990s,
Mhm.
where we trying to come up with a digital audio tape format. We had compact cassette and we had compact disc, and now we're trying to find, can we do a digital audio tape format? And maybe they don't do this anymore, but it was amazing at the time. Sony had two different teams in the audio division at Sony working on two different formats to make a thing happen. And they both chased at it. They both came up with it. There's two different formats that came out. The specs were similar but different. And I guess the thing I learned was, and this is what Morita-san was talking about, it is the innovator's dilemma, in essence. It's, you have to obsolete your own product. If you have some great product that you have, and the market loves it, you have to always think about how do you replace it? How do you destroy that market and create a new one? And in Morita-san's terminology, everybody else is trying to do that right now. So if you don't do it to yourself, someone else will do it to you. So it's better you do it to yourself. So never get too hung up on your product. Don't think that this is the last, this is the end all. We've created the ultimate product. There'll be no version 21 or 22. This is everything. If you think that, you're crazy. There's always something better. There's always something more powerful, always something more attractive. And if you're not constantly pursuing that as a company, understand everybody else is trying to do it to you. So murder your darlings, as they say. Um, Obsolete your own product. That's what I would tell every team.
All right. You're either gonna consume it or you're gonna produce it.
Correct. Better you produce it.
Yeah, always.
Exactly.
When you think about the mark you've left on the gaming industry and the people you've worked with, a part of what we've discussed, what do you hope your legacy gonna be? Not just in terms of like products or profits, but in how you've inspired others, maybe.
Um, I think legacy is too big of a word. I'm just a business guy. I did some business over there, and I'm gone and largely forgotten anyway. Um, but the thing I would say, if I could use such a highfalutin term as legacy, um, it's what people asked me when I was chairman of Worldwide Studios. What is the job of chairman of studios? What does that even mean? And is that just this? You sit over there in the corner, and people come by and bring you cake or something? I said, no, my job is chairman of the studios. I'm not the creative director, so I'm not telling you how to design your game. I'm not the chief technology officer telling you what tools to use to make your game. I'm not the marketing guy telling you this is the way you go to market with your game. The job as chairman is one job, as I saw it, was I'm in front of these 14 studios I had at the time, and my job is to be ahead of everyone on the road so I can remove all the rocks from the road. I can fill the gaps in the road. I can take this dead tree off the road so the teams can perform. They can continue on their path to making the game that they want to make. And my sole job is just to eliminate the obstructions. My job is to eliminate the boulders, but also go to Tokyo and get the bunch of money that it takes to make these games. Um, Nothing more or nothing less than that. So legacy, if that's what you're going to call it. I hope people look at what I did when I did it and said, yeah, Shawn got most of the rocks off the road.
And you certainly did it, based on what we can see.
Well, they were very, very good teams, and it was my honor, my privilege, to be their chairman. But all the success of Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch and Bend and Insomniac and Media Molecule and Pixel Opus, they created their success themselves. I just got the rocks out of the road.
Isn't that the most important one?
Well, in order to get the money in, it was important to get the rocks out of the road. Definitely.
Oh, Sean, thank you very much for coming here. I don't
Of
want
course.
to like take a lot of your time. I mean, we can go like another 2, 3 hours, but I don't want to do that.
I
Because it,
appreciate you reaching out. I wasn't aware of your podcast or your audience, and you reached out to me, and we had a great conversation today. And to your fans out there, I think Armin's doing great work with his pod, and yeah, it was my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
thank you very much, Sean. I hope to see you soon in San Francisco.
Yep, come out. The weather's great.
All right. Thank you again, Sean.
All right, brother.
Have
Take
a
care.
lovely day.